If you could take your seats, we're going to get started. My name is Bill Warner. I'm your town planner. I've been here since January. Really thrilled about the turnout that we've been having. Today we're going to talk about, we're going to review what happened on Friday night. How many of you were here Friday? Or Wednesday, I'm sorry. A lot of you. Okay, so we're going to quickly review what happened on Wednesday, and then we're going to go into the whole project of really trying to, as you saw, Wednesday, we talked about 4 particular areas. So now, and that's kind of identifying those particular areas. Now today is really about how to connect all those ideas together into one cohesive village. So it's going all the way down to the river, it's going up to the reservoir, and connecting everything together. You know, Swan Hill, how does it all work as one? And Terry's going to take you through a process to explain that. First, I'm going to introduce John Mullen. So he's our lead facilitator, and he can introduce the rest of the team. Thanks for coming. And more coffee is coming.
You got it. Thanks for organizing. Okay. Thank you very much. My name is John Mullen. In real life, I'm a professor of urban planning at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. I get hired for these because I'm ex-military, and I can combine academics, practice, and taking care of ruckus situations. And so I think that's why I get these jobs. The turnout last time was absolutely incredible. I think we had over 140 people, and those were the ones who signed it. I think there were another probably 160 people. So and I thought that it was tremendous. The demographics were represented the town quite nicely, the village, and I thought that the people were coming out forthwith. So that was really great. I'm Mullen. Xenia Coatfall is my partner. She's a professor at Michigan State University, the real university in Michigan, and we have some debates about that. And she comes, we've been partners in urban planning for over 20 years. Terry Ann Hahn, who's a LADA land planners, long-term planner in Connecticut and designer, landscape designer, and her work is, you can see it all over the state. University of Hartford students, can you raise your hands? Okay. Now, Bill is a former student of mine, and I do want you to know that 20 years ago, he got all A's. And now I want all the Hartford students to know that that's the type of guy you're working with. The other thing is that when Bill put this together, to calculate the cost savings of having these professional students here at no cost to the village is really quite profound. And to Terry and Bill, well done. Thank you. Okay, now let's go to the review results. Okay, numerous studies have already been conducted. This is one of the few towns that I've been working in recent time. You don't need any more studies. Thank you. All right. You've got your base, you've got your foundation, you've got your data. What you need now is to move forward towards implementation. That's become clear, and we caught that as a vibe the moment we walked in here, and we caught it in terms of the material that you put down on paper. Okay, what has changed? So is there one before that? Can you go back to the one before that right there? No, that one. Okay. So, one of the key highlights that we took all your sheets, we sat down with them and said, okay, in a summarial way, this is still going to be refined more. What did we find coming out of the first part of the trip? 1, bring back HES. Not necessarily as HES, the school, but HES as a school, and HAS as having a community function in education. And that there are many examples that we have seen across both Connecticut and New England where that is. You're keeping it there, things change, and maintaining some kind of an educational function as we go through growth, it makes very good sense. So that was one thing that came clear. Number 2, the community septic system. Nothing is going to happen in downtown without a community septic system, period. And that how we put that in is going to be a very critical factor as we have things to do next year. The third critical thing, you said that the Rossi site should be used for multiple uses, and that made very good sense to us. And indeed, what we're looking towards here as we write this thing is how do we move to do the negotiations with Rossi that is done in a fair and public and deliberative and transformative way. That's a critical point. Relocation, tied to that is the relocation of the town garage, and then indeed that those two things go together. It also goes together in terms of the trails and opening up your streams so people can see them, so that it's a threefer in essence. So you've got environmental improvements, you've got a garage, new site for garage, you've got Rossi for development. Linking them is something that you have all recognized as being quite important. Potential for tax generation uses and community services at HES. One of the things that I don't know who came up with the idea, but the community kitchen was brilliant. And coming up and using that, there are examples of that being used. I know we worked on one up in Greenfield, Massachusetts, and it was funded by EDA, the Economic Development Administration. Also, we've more recently, the RDA, the Rural Development Administration, has funded them as well. This is going to require grant writing. It's going to require doing some studies, require working with your federal representatives, but indeed it's something that we have seen can work quite nicely. The other part of it, and one of the themes, and Patrick brought it up as well, the link between environmental things, the link between community things makes great sense. We create a community kitchen, we have a farmer's market across the way, and we have a marketplace just across the way. And look at the linkages that are occurring, from farm to cooking to selling, all within 100 yards, and something that can be done within the scale of a village. It makes perfect sense to us. Incubated space, that's another example. It could go into a maker space, it could go into the school, multiple uses. It's going to take some management for this place here to make this all work. But if you see the multiple uses that come in here, and it also serves almost as a civic center for the village center. Village centers work best when they have a civic function, when they have some kind of governmental uses beyond the post office. And what happens if we begin to have this place functioning in a way with all of these functions, all of these activities, then it's really going to strengthen this place in terms of vitality. Artist space, maker space at Scoville site, that's not far either. This is something that we're seeing all over New England, and our specialty as a consulting company is the revitalization of old mills. And we're in love with yours. These mill buildings are an absolute treasure. And the thing about and looking at them in terms of artist activities and maker space there makes great sense. One of the things that we found we're looking at right now across southern New England is the absence of forges and foundries for sculptures. And we have plotted how many universities and schools and private sculptures there are around this area, and they have no place to forge their work. And these buildings, to us, this has some kind of, it looks to us it has some potential for that. That's just one activity. But indeed, what we're looking for is, we call it uniqueness, specialty, and cachet. What have you got that's separate? Those buildings are unique. They're not your common buildings in terms of mill towns across New England. And they cry out to have some kind of unique use. Environmental cleanup, absolutely crucial. Ground foundational, ground level, nothing happens unless we do it. And this is the one area in planning that is, you can't do it in the short term. You can't do it in low price. You just got to do it. And that's become something you guys recognize in the reports as well. Trails and linkages to recreation areas, Cove, Reservoir, and Center. Oh, this was one. We were surprised this was not stronger. Because you ask what is different about what you have, and indeed you can find out that these streams and the cove and the river and the opportunity to link them speaks loudly in terms of what your community is. And finally, establishing a business district that's powerful in itself. What is the district? One of the things we look for is not to have meandering down the highway. Strips are not New Englandy. Strips don't belong in a village. What we've got to do is define mass, bring it together, and indeed, when you, as you said in the report, that what will happen is that you'll begin to see infill and higher density within the scale of the village. That's what you said in the report in terms of what we had. There are other activities in there. I love the one person got up and said, bring back the ferry. And I have to admit, I'm a bit of a romantic. And I said, I love the idea. I didn't even know there was a ferry to begin with. But the fact is that that's out there, and we will be picking up on those issues that are in other parts in the papers as well. Okay. All right. Now, that's the summary of where we are. Now we're going to move from there to what we're going to do today. I'm going to turn it over to my boss, Terry Hahn.
We write them on those little blocks.
Yes, so you indicate what you want it to be on as well.
Did we want a bike path on 154 going out of town? With
The reservoir right up here would be Shell, Crew, and Rolling on the reservoir side.
And we also want one of the kindergarten, the old kindergarten. We want the library. Yeah, that's this big of classrooms.
So I think we want to take
focal point. So if there's something you wanted to, I guess.
Well, I was thinking if you want any more, I don't have that. Well, we could write that down. That's a good idea. But if we have the high school anymore.
The trails are pretty nice. But if you want a bike path up to, I don't know. Because all we have is yellow. We don't have the yellow on here.
Side, there's nothing. There's nothing to the corner.
Well, there's no sidewalk. Incubator. So makerspace.
Okay, so what we have done is we started out with a few of our big ideas are that we really believe that the Scoville-Hoe area is rather important. So we've actually tagged that to be a brewery or distillery along with a beer garden. And that would be very, very different kinds of uses because the beer garden would definitely bring people into town. I've seen that happen myself and living in Pennsylvania. So that was our big idea for being able to bring in revenue, being able to bring in tourism, being able to bring in constant events year round. What else have we? Tom, what other things did we put on our? I know that we have ours upside down. The other thing is we wanted to increase housing in town, and we figured 3 different ways of doing that. Tom highlighted some single-family housing that could happen down on this part of town. That could be a single-family housing because that property is for sale right now, with footbridges across the brook. We also would like to purchase the Rossi property, which would be mixed-use kind of housing, maybe some elements of some community and businesses, but also apartments or condos in both the Rossi property and across the street. So we were thinking we could have single-family homes, townhomes, and apartments, 3 different kinds of housing for different people at different points in their lifetime. what else? Access. We would love to see some additional connection to the river and to rail systems. So we would really like to see that connection down to the water. And a dock. We'd like to see a dock, and we'd like to see the rail system brought up through town for tourism as well as for transportation eventually all the way to Hartford if we wanted to. And then what other kind of thing did we put on here? Oh yeah, for the school part, we came up with the idea that this could be an ecotourism center. So it could be an area that we have businesses that could coordinate your kayak trips, coordinate your bicycle trips, coordinate hiking, coordinate even bringing in some tournaments and things to town. I worked in an area years ago where we brought in a basketball tournament every year. And the school was the hub, and they had that in a number of different areas. We even thought that we could even have kind of an ecotourism lodging in this building. So people coming who would be on trips and things like that would be almost kind of more dormitory housing or something like that. But those were, I think, some of our biggest ideas.
All right, we have a novel idea. Rebecca, if you would point to the heart. Let's say, first of all, we take the town garage, et cetera, all that stuff, move it out of town somewhere. Then, the 1.5 acres that we already own as Haddam, that becomes the heart of our village. And in there is a visitor center with restrooms and rentals for kayaks, paddleboards, and bikes. And with that, in the bikeway and the trail system, what we end up doing is having a hike, bike, concentric river to reservoir. So that becomes a whole channel, and when you drive into town, regardless of which road you use to get into town, that's one of the first things you see: visitor center rentals for bikes to get up to Swan Hill, kayaks and paddleboards you take down to the cove and to river, down Haddam Meadows, etc. Another item in here is that for the Scoville buildings, we don't spend all the money to make it housing and apartments, which would be great, but it's very expensive. So what we do is we convert it to Scoville Sports, which is indoor. We do pickleball, which is the fastest growing sport in the U.S. right now. We do limited amounts of tennis practice, and we do ice skating, hockey. And it's not just for residents, it's also for visitors, but a really key feature is for Haddam Killingworth students. So the students can come down, pickleball, skating, hockey, etc. And then that's tied in. Patrick Pinnell was the only guy here who knew about this ancient sluiceway that runs from the reservoir. Rebecca, that's the green line right there? Yes. It's an ancient sluiceway that runs from the reservoir down to the cove. And so you use that space to make that a path bikeway as well. So now you've tied in the reservoir with Scoville Sports, the center green, which now has a visual line down to the river, and then the old Rossi property becomes mixed use, housing, shops, etc. And then a big area over here back behind where Jack's is, etc., that becomes new housing.
Same ideas were just mentioned, but we want to make sure we have some kind of a connectivity. We get the sidewalk or bike path that goes from the reservoir down to the river, and around, I don't know if we get up to Swans Hill or not, and back by the school here, and then connect through downtown. So just have a big circular loop somehow to either walk or bike. We did suggest having the Rossi property have the garage moved to the back side and the front side used for either mixed use, retail and or restaurants and or some housing. For the town garages now, thought about some kind of a rental or housing on the current town garage area. The Rossi, or the Scoville factory, these the artisans, small crafts, sort of cutesy type things that would draw people to come in. We did have a bike path that would go around, and a walking path go around the reservoir. Right now, you only see it from the road. You really can't get to it. We wanted to have more handicap accessibility through the whole town area. We also thought for this property here, besides having the kitchen, make use of the kitchen that we have here, somebody suggested we have a dog park in the back, which would allow people to bring their animals and use them not too close to the road. We have a septic tank that they may like to play over. And then just use the green areas to make sure that we dress up the downtown area. So we just don't see sidewalks and buildings, but try to make use of the landscaping.
Our idea is similar to some of the stuff that's been echoed here. So the center of our plan is kind of a nucleus of an outdoor center at Rossi that would have the ability to get center to Swan Hill, the center to the Cove, and the outdoor center would have varying businesses that would either buy or sell or rent kayaks, bikes, whatever, give you the opportunity to, literally buy it and walk right out and try it. I mean, when you look at other businesses like North Cove and Saybrook or things like that, when they held outdoor events, they had to host it at Cedar Lake, or they had to go somewhere to do it. This would have the ability to host it right on site and go right out and use it. Moving out from the center towards HES, we were thinking of this building being somewhat of a YMCA area that would, instead of having to go to Middletown or Westbrook or whatever for your activities for your kids, let it be right here in town. Perhaps approach the Y to open a satellite office, perhaps something self-sufficient. It's just a concept at this point. The businesses along the Rossi property for outdoor, the top of them could be apartments or some type of housing. It would be, allow some kind of housing in town, and then the primarily part of the housing would be down across from the reservoir area, that for sale property that another table brought up, and make it, we like the concept similar to what was over by Goodspeed, the small residential housing that they put up along the street. It's not apartment buildings, but small, they look like small homes. I don't know if those are apartments inside, if they're multi-units or if they're individual units, but at least it doesn't give the apartment building kind of feel. And then setting up the interconnectivity between, you could head out to the Connecticut River via the Cove, you come back to the center, and your businesses provide, sandwiches. You could either have sit-down restaurants, or you could have things that package things for the go. But in any case, the plan really focuses on the recreational ability of the center. One concept that we just wanted to separate housing from commercial a little bit is just to avoid the problem of, you don't want somebody to come down to visit to use the recreation and they bump into a parking space that says reserved for 1A, and you don't want 1A to come in and say somebody's in my parking spot and I live here. So if we could somehow separate that in some capacity, that was the reason that we put housing just a little bit more on the outskirts than right in the center.
Okay, thank you very much. Table 9. Oh, hold on, we got one thing. What? Okay, town garage on plan number 9 is out of the center. Okay, good. We started kind of connecting everything. Bike trails, walk trails, across the street, put sidewalks in front of HES, all the way up, accessibility to the Cove, up 154, because we all know how difficult that is to come to the center with bikes. Go down 81, connect to the reservoir. We also utilize the Rossi for lots of outdoor activities. What do we say? Bike shop, skate park, kayaking with bike trails and sidewalks, or something down to the Cove, kind of like Jeff had said to. We kind of want the whole village atmosphere, so the learn
housing, we put on Scoville. So we put a brewery. What else did we put there? At Scoville with like dance studio, art center with apartments up at the top because those really look nice in those old mills. Eating a restaurant kind of in front of Rossi to help attract more people to all of those shops. We also put affordable housing where the town garage is now. We moved the town garage out of the center for this exercise. Center. Somehow connect High Street to the center, which would be more of the connectivity. Work, employment opportunities. We would make work from home more appealing. We have a town beach at the reservoir. And then across the street, we thought of a community center with splash pad, pool, tennis, things like that. Thinking outside of the box, and then you go to the town beach across the street. Obviously learn, this being a school, whether or not be an Adelbrook or something half school, half community, or something like that. HK Rec, civil uses, things of that nature. Basically, we just wanted to utilize all of our natural resources, the bike trails, the walking, the Swan Hill, the reservoir, the cove, and the river, and make it affordable for everyone and populated, just get people here.
So we're pretty much in the same line as most others. We talked about moving the garage up to behind the firehouse is kind of where we did. I'll start at the school. We talked about civic mixed uses. One of the things we discussed was trying to convince UConn to move their extension center here. This building lends itself well. There were a couple different uses with the wings. We also talked about kind of a tourist information center here where we'd have signage pointing you to the different trails into the reservoir so that people from out of town know where they're going. Also providing a public restroom space here. We also talked about extending sidewalks in front of the school here where they end right up to Higgy's and the gas station and Dunkin' Donuts and all that, to the church and beyond. Moving down, we talked about using the green as a real central focus point for a lot of events. We talked about 100 events per year, so it would be something like every day, every weekend throughout the year. The pumpkin, some kind of the pumpkin run certainly starts and ends there. We talked about a triathlon would be a nice thing to bring people into town. We talked about a bucket festival, whatever that means. We can figure that out as we move forward. Moving down more, we've got sidewalk connections from the center right up into Scoville, where we'll create some maker space. There's some opportunities for parking there, but we primarily looked at maker space. That's sort of a mixed, industrial artist sort of. The existing town garage turns into a park, which it was historically, where we would have a dog park and we'd have some fishing opportunities. You've got a stream all on three sides of that triangle. The Rossi site becomes primarily housing, probably 1 and 2 bedroom mixed apartments for mixed ages. The existing office building would become a restaurant with some nice opportunities for outdoor seating that would run right down to the corner where the stream is. Moving up 154, we talked about new sidewalks and parallel parking right up the hill to the existing sidewalks that we've got. And cleaning up the front of the Country Market building or the Grange building with some green space. There's a couple of forward-facing parking spaces there that we'd like to remove and put some greenery and maybe some trees and just pretty up the front of that. And then running down 81, it's pretty good. It's got sidewalks, and what we want to do is just connect to the reservoir. We talked about kayak rental over there, which would tie into our triathlon idea, and then a green sort of bike walk path around from sort of AJ's around the backside of the street, behind the stream there, and just another way for bikes and peds to move around the same time. Am I missing anything? Oh, the history trail, right? We talked about a history trail on that greenway where we would highlight some of the industrial past that we've got here. We had Higganum Manufacturing at Scoville and the wire products and all these other things. So we would try to highlight some of that.
We're at table 4, and I'm going to start out with the key properties that we're most changing. I'm a numbers guy, so I'm trying to make it realistic, and obviously in light of taxes and whatnot, we need to, figure out the best way to make this work. So, town garage, we like the Bill Warner idea of putting it at the Rossi property and then separating it with the green. And that big open space that Kate is pointing near the road with the green, the green over there, yeah. It's going to be more so like a two-tier kind of green in connection with the existing green. So you have more opportunity. You could put food trucks on one side and, concerts on the other, etc. And we do like that Mucket idea. We want to have like a once-a-year Mucket Madness Festival or something to that effect. So then there would be parking for that area, and that those 4x4 graph paper things are like retail on the first floor and residential space on the second floor. So that's facing Saybrook Road right there. So that would all connect to the town green. The other major component is the Scoville property. And, we look at what we have around the area. We could be Chester, we could be Essex, but we need something to differentiate ourselves. And, Guilford has a racket club, Rocky Hill has a racket club. We don't have one around this area. So, potential for the racket club, we like the tennis idea. Potentially on one side of the Scoville property buildings, and then the other side would be, hold on, I can't see my, Theater and Arts, yep. And then on the other side facing the brook, we'd have restaurant and what else was there? Retail. So potential outdoor seating. The Citizens Bank building would parlay the existing septic, or the new septic, and it would be a brewery restaurant. Fork in the Road would definitely have access to septic so they can expand their services into coffee, etc. And what am I missing? Oh, the Old Town Garage is a mixed-use property, and I can't, Makerspace, got it. Yep, and then we'd have sidewalk connectivity all the way to the reservoir, all the way down Saybrook Road, all the way through High Street, and it was just, more walkability. We want people to come to our farmers markets on both tiers and be able to walk around the areas, and obviously Swan Lake, etc. Am I missing anything? Oh, did I say Swan Lake? Swan Hill. My daughter's a dancer, so yeah. Yep, right behind HES, you'll see community gardens, maybe usage of that. Oh, HES, so that would be half school, half community center. We'd use the gym similar to a format like the town of Cromwell uses their, town offices / gym, etc. We won't have town offices there. We'll keep our town offices where they are, but more community center space over there.
Okay, hopefully I'll remember everything that Lisa helped me. Starting at the school, we agreed that we would like to see the town offices in the school with a senior center, some youth activities. We'd also like to have a really great playground that's handicapped accessible. And then I think, and the commercial kitchen we wanted there. And then heading down to the Rossi property, we wanted to see that as mixed use with definitely senior affordable rental properties and commercial probably on the first floor and residential on the second, but maybe some mixed, however that works out. We had a very hard time and we did not come to consensus about the town garage, but the majority said that if the front of the property was definitely used for mixed use and it looked nice, that we could mostly agree that the town garage could go there. And then the current town garage, we wanted to see the building in the front maybe relocated, the uses that are currently there, and that it go back to a town green, similar to what other people are talking about. We didn't think of public restrooms and all that stuff, but we did see it as a real open space and more flat than the current town green, so that it was more of a focal point and connected, gave people access to the river. The Scoville Ho building we also had difficulty agreeing about, but we definitely saw that the greenway could start there. I think similar to what everybody else is talking about, a greenway all the way down to the river. I think we forgot to put up to Swan Hill, but we did talk about that in one of our previous maps. If we also talked about wanting to explore using the current town green as additional septic, because most of us wanted to see Scoville with a restaurant and some artist incubator makerspace there. Then we wanted the greenway, or at least sidewalk, to connect up to the reservoir, have some focal point at the reservoir where it's just more accessible, picnic tables, whatever can be used so it's more useful. A sidewalk in between the post office building and the market, so that maybe some people would park and actually walk between the two. Maybe we could convince the bank to let us use it as a pop-up while we still hold the lease. What else am I missing? Oh, we really want a kayak rack. Me. Yeah, Dan?
Since I only have a minute, I think a lot of the subjects have been, very similar themes. One of the things at the beginning we saw was there is a consensus for equal levels of development in all aspects. So it's living, it's retail, it's recreation, it's also the connection to the river. So what we did was we identified that there's both the car and the pedestrian/bike. So we focused our connections on how to traverse through the site, through the town, on two levels. One is through the center of town with a more developed area. So starting up at this Rossi property, how do we take advantage of that area, become a focal node, and develop it with the multiple maximum amount of development that makes sense. So with mixed-use housing, with retail, focusing specific building and construction that emphasizes the connection back to the cove. And then going back down towards the reservoir, how do we infill the urban environment that's already there to maximize the ability for urban development, for new retail spaces, to kind of really maximize the pedestrian aspect of that. So we look to the back of the property as well as the front streetscape to kind of really add some additional living space as well, mixed use along the greenway, along the hill on the backside of the Bush is pointing out. And then the other aspect is how do we connect all that together with the greenway. So we looked at using walkways and paths that connect all the rivers back from the reservoir all the way up to the cove and then around. So we kind of really kind of encourage the exploration of this one area and utilize it. And then for HES, we see it as a very flexible space where we take advantage of the handicap accessibility for senior involvement. We see the creative space for community theater. This space here is a flexible performance space. Have a component for school, maintain the use, the vibrancy of the kids, keep that kind of feeling here, because that also brings, if it is a school, it's not related to the town, but it's a private school, we're also bringing families into the town, and we'd be able to encourage more people coming in using the areas around here, whether it be recreation or businesses. I think, thank you.
Did we miss anything from your table? Town garage.
So in this premise, we went with the fact that the town garage is on the Rossi property, but with a proper balance of mixed use living, and we see that there could be a potential use to have it on the site there.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess the last thing is evenly balancing the green open spaces with the urban development, or not urban development, but the development for commercial use. So to counterpoint the development on the Rossi side, the Rossi property, we have the open green space on the other side, and then it works its way down to the reservoir.
Hi. Table 3, we had consensus, pretty much as everyone else did, as far as greenway, bike paths, all that, trying to use Swan Hill, the rivers, the streams, and all of the reservoir and all that area is what we were really going for. Our problem was consensus on any kind of living space in the center of town. 3 of our members live across the street and weren't crazy about having living spaces here or down at Rossi. So it was difficult where we were going with that. This building, the HES, we were thinking more of a community space, community center, tying that in, be it, as other people have talked about, a theater, schools, whatever in this space. The Rossi property, we would move the town garage to the back of that, in that we own it. It's a spot that's close to town, and we do it. The front half would be going into stores and like trying to hide the town garage in the back as best we could. What else we got there? The Scoville plant would be going, we were thinking more for the arts and crafts group, the forges that she talked about before. Trying to get people to come into town to be able to see those, and working with the creative people that would come in, not going for big box stores or whatever to come in that area, but looking for small craftsmen that would do it. What else we got, Linda? The old, yep, we would take the bike path and like all the way around the reservoir. The town garage now we would put into a green space and maybe some mixed use on the side of that. Pretty much, that's about it, okay?
We wanted to connect all the neighborhoods, Dublin Hill, High Street neighborhood, Christian Hill neighborhood with sidewalks. We talked about bike trails going further, that people can, kind of basically go across town on the major routes, biking. And handicap accessibility is important. We didn't get it on this last version, but in the village center, I don't think once you get to the hills, it'll be as important. So also visual connectivity, there's a great view of Swan Hill as you drive north on 81, and so we think that view should be preserved or emphasized. And we talked about maybe a wayfinding spot at the end of 81, a focal point of some sort. Parking, we're focused on-street parking, just about on all the major streets. There was a plan originally, they had a lot more parking than was implemented. We talked about it. We talked about creating a back street that would go, it kind of, in there, and also possibly having an exercise trail with stations along it there.
Cottage housing.
Oh, and then the lot that's just beyond the brook, down lower, there, cottage housing. Nope, down lower. Yeah, there it is. Cottage housing, and we were talking about maybe the rental or for sale units, but very small 1 to 2 bedroom units that would appeal to both people starting out, recent graduates, and people and recent retirees that would want them. And then along 81 and basically anywhere else we can fit it, we talked about infill development. So within small scale, mixed use, infill development between existing buildings, it gives current property owners opportunity to create more density and create a walkable street that's sidewalk centered. And then, okay, so the major sites, we talked about also connecting all the natural assets. So the cove, the res, Swan Hill, and there's a plan in place already that was done like a decade ago that came up with a loop that was doable. And connecting the res from both sides, from this side, but also down either through the cemetery, connecting across, into Scoville. I'm just drawing a blank. Across Maple into Scoville. And then also expanding the green possibly in toward the community center and the Scoville property, that area, maybe doing an amphitheater on that sloped surface or something, and creating a plaza so that our green expands, but it's a little different character. Scoville we saw as some kind of combination of like maker space, incremental incubator space, maker space, incubator space, and maybe artists. And we saw that as, because it was traditionally an employer, and a lot of people walked there as they did to Rossi and other places, that it should remain an employment kind of center. And also we talked about having a history of early industry and recreating the mill pond, which is to the west of the buildings. And then you can see the parts of the remnants of the dam and the spillway and stuff in there now, like recreating that and having interpretive signs along that. Okay, HES, our first consensus, or first option is to have it be a public neighborhood school. So that, if that can't be done, then the second option is to have some kind of community civic use. Could be a mixture of things, making use of the commercial kitchen. We talked about adult opportunities for exercise. So in addition to the playground for kids, having things that adults could do, a pickup basketball game, and we had a bunch of other ideas, maybe tennis courts. So we had a bunch of ideas for that.
Commercial kitchen.
Yeah, and the commercial kitchen, making use of the commercial kitchen. And we could not reach consensus on the Rossi property. 3 of us were for removing the town garage outside of the village, and 1 for. So we decided that site could just stay as it is for now. And more important to us was to get the small scale infill development and get the Scoville site going. We talked about having a visitor center that maybe also had public restrooms. And I think that's it.
Much of these brooks, why don't we clear away so people can see them?
All right, so doing it in a legal way, open up view sheds. Maybe DPW can help or something like this, but again, do it legally. Okay, go ahead.
An appraisal of the Rossi property and a management plan for this place.
Okay, management plan, appraisal for Rossi. Who else? Right here.
Eminent domain for the public sewer, utilities, where the bank is, eminent domain, take it over.
All right, eminent domain in 90 days. Think about eminent domain. Thank you. Right here.
Get the sewer system up.
All right, get the sewer system plan in place. Work on that. Okay. What else? Go ahead. Okay. Now, one of the things, the question, how are we going to finance this? The first thing is to send out and find out who else has done this. Number 1, commercial kitchens across areas like communities like this. Look at your Rural Development Act. They're funding them. They're funding rural kitchens, commercial kitchens right now. So there it is. Overwhelmingly, they're funding it. Look at your conservation law, conservation land, conservation.
Plan of Conservation and Development.
Thank you. Who was that? Thank you, Liz. All right, yes, go to Lynn. Go to that. And we're finding that that's a source in terms of your waterways. Another one in there is every time that you're going to require an environmental protection agency, make sure you include trails as a component for the planning that goes in with that. Lemmy, what would you do in the next 90 days right here?
My first choice would be to get a use for this building.
Get a use for this building.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
I think first we might be nice to know what kind of funds might be available to us. You know,
Okay.
What kind of funding can we get and for what? So
Okay.
we can use it.
That's a wonderful question. find out what the funding sources are now coming through the feds and the state. Find out what the cost sharing would be with you, and then see what it would mean in terms of coming back to the people for some help.
Right, and then use it.
That could be done in 90 days.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I think the elephant in the room is where is the town garage going?
Okay.
That's gonna happen in the next 7 days.
Okay.
Or leave it.
Who wants to help on that? Go ahead.
So,
More
I mean,
than
leave it
half
where it
the
is.
people, more than half the tables here said they want the town garage out of the center. So if we're going for majority rules, I think that we need to come up with a share for
More than
that. If this meeting is doing what we hope it's doing, and we're gonna listen to what people want.
Okay. I think you could say that as the will of this meeting, I'm not sure, I have to look.
I figured out the percentages.
Okay, thank you. If that was true, then in effect what we should do is point this out to the political officials, that it was the will by a majority that this take place.
And they promised to listen to the will of the officials.
And they promised to listen.
They promised to listen to the will.
All right, I will accept both of those. Who else? Go ahead.
I mean, all this is a moot point unless you put the septic in.
Septic.
Yeah.
So you have to do that first in the first 90 days, and hopefully start before it gets too cold to actually do anything with the ground.
Very good.
Okay, all right, the opinion here is that the focus should be on the septic first. Go ahead, right here.
I think we need a full feasibility of Rossum.
All right, feasibility on Rossum.
On the market value.
Okay, who else? Go ahead.
There are things that everybody, if we agree on, put them in the long-term capital plan immediately and try to figure out how to make that work, and then the rest kind of branch off.
Okay, tell me about your long-term capital plan. Is it funded? What? Is it funded?
Something here. We need to figure that out.
Okay, all right. Okay. Long-term cap, if you wanted to make this thing work, then in effect, some of this has to come through the long-term capital plan. Okay? Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Two things. Number one, when you have medical veterans, they are so brave, that museum, it's unbelievable. We've got uniforms that cost you.
Okay.
Another thing too is, you can do it in 90 days. People in the town voted for cell towers. Where are they?
Okay, so you're bringing up 2 points. One is the need to focus on cell towers and come up with something different. Okay, thank you. And the other is look at the cultural aspects of veterans. Thank you. Right here, please.
I'm going to answer the specifics, but so if we opt not to relocate the town garage to the Rossi property, do we bother with an appraisal? Will the town purchase it if we won't move the garage there?
Don't
And
purchase
we need a
it.
decision on that.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
it should be.
Why
All
purchase
right,
it?
stand easy. Go ahead.
No, she makes a good point, that property should be appraised before the price is even considered. And we also, as Jim pointed out, we need to understand the liability of the property.
Okay.
And we do have other options for where this town garage can go. There'll be a study of 4 properties, 2 dropped out, but there's still, I mean, we own 25 acres at the firehouse. That's still centric, but it's not in the center. And I think that needs to be further vetted.
Help me out now in the 90 days. What do you think could happen in the 90 days?
I agree that we need to come up with a plan for this as the current meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't hear, what'd you say, Katie?
I think we need to
HES.
focus on
HES?
a direction for HES that relates to all the priorities that the people are agreeing on, that people are, considering.
Okay, thank you. Right over here, this table's been quiet. 90 days.
Well, I'd have to slightly disagree with someone over here that said that more than half the table said they didn't want the town garage in the center. I think it was pretty evenly split, but you guys will figure out the numbers and let us know. But I see the town garage in the Rossi property, tucked behind it, made to look good, and nobody even know it's there.
Thank you.
I think breaking the Rossi property is step one
and everything is contingent on acquiring Rossi to bring it.
Okay, I'm gonna give the last word. Bill, what do you think, what do you hear?
All right, well, thanks for everybody coming. This has been great. And John Mullen and I did this about 3 or 4 years ago in Farmington, where we had about 500 people participating, and the 90 days is critical. And what we did there is we've identified something that was achievable and doable, and how were we going to fund it? In Farmington, they all of these maps that they did all had street trees up and down the street, so they really liked more street trees. So all of a sudden we said, okay, let's put $50,000 in the capital plan for street trees. And they did that, they funded it, and now they have money to start doing that. And that's the important part about this, is that they're going to go put together a plan with all of your ideas and try and come up with one recommended plan and boil it all down. And hopefully we'll present that in second week in December to town meeting somehow, so everybody can see what that is. But then the budget process starts. So then we hopefully can identify something reasonable to put in that people can identify with, yeah, that came out of these workshops. And then it starts to pick up momentum. That's how you keep a plan alive. You can't just plan, you have to implement. And that's how we do that. So I want to thank you all for coming. It's been great. It's a great town. I'm really happy I'm here. And we got a lot of food left, I think. Please feel free to take all you can. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.